Well, welcome back, everyone. It's great to have you here again. I see a lot of familiar faces and some new faces today. I just wanted to say a quick happy anniversary to my beloved Ryan. Thank you for walking this path with me. So there are some new faces here today, so thank you for coming. Whether you're here because of your connection with myself or another teacher, or you became curious by reading Autobiography of a Yogi or something else that inspired you to be here today, thank you for coming, and I hope you're able to receive the talk and the meditation and be uplifted. And also thank you for the long-time meditators and Kriya yogis that are here. I hope that you also feel mutually uplifted as I do by your presence. Just a few announcements. So next week, September 8th, it's kind of a double whammy. So we have 2 Kriya Yoga Alliance members that will be giving talks and leading meditations. So if you feel up to attending both, it will be an opportunity to practice and sit in meditation even longer with a group of people. So the first one is with David McGrath, and he's in Ireland. So he starts at 5 a.m. Eastern time, which I think for people on the West Coast, that would be like 2 in the morning. So if you feel like joining that, he begins his talk and meditation at 5 a.m. And then we also have Ray Booker, who will be leading meditation at the usual 11 o'clock a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific. And then you're welcome to visit our website, Kriya Yoga Alliance. We will post whoever's speaking for each Sunday. We try to keep that updated for you. We also have an Instagram page and a Facebook page, so you're welcome to check those out, Kriya Yoga Alliance, just for updates. So today, I'd like to talk about grace. And I'm an Ayurvedic practitioner, so those of you who don't know what that is a sister science to yoga. And Ayurveda is a science of life. And one of the many things that I love about Ayurvedic medicine is that we use the natural rhythms of nature to support healing, to use the time of day, to use the qualities inherent in nourishing food, to heal the senses, to reacquaint us with our true nature as being connected to everything else. So I often will look into research, look into things that have to do with Ayurvedic medicine, with healing. And I was reminded the other day of the immense healing qualities of the sun. And this is something that yogis know and are attuned to, that Ayurvedic practitioners know about, that by proper exposure to sunlight, it provides us with an opportunity to increase our health as well as fighting off infection. Now, if you're a science type, you can look into documented research on this. If that satisfies your fiery mind, you can do that. I do love that modern science is actually discovering this quality of the sun that has been around forever. I'm sure most of you know too that we synthesize vitamin D by exposure to sunlight, and vitamin D also has a very protective quality via our immune systems. And so just keep that in mind, that the sun, if you or yourself, if you're struggling with some kind of infection, let's say, to allow yourself a little bit of exposure, 10-15 minutes of sunlight, and allow that that essence, the sun, that is available to everyone, allow that to support you to heal. So contemplating the sun a little bit, And today is Sunday, by the way, so the planet Sun is related to today. I also investigated what the Nitya, or moon goddess of the day, is today. And for many of you that have sat with me before, you know that is something that I practice regularly. And when I speak with you, I often will talk about the moon goddess of the day. And so the moon goddess today, her name is Jwala Malini. And that translates to mean garlanded with flames. So she has the digits of the sun emanating from her. That's one way to kind of look at it. And each moon goddess imbibes a Shakti, or a creative energy, a creative life force energy that we can contemplate. And her Shakti, she is the giver of wisdom and the remover of fear. So she provides us with wisdom and she removes fear. And so I invite you today, after the talk, when we sit in meditation, to allow those qualities to come through you. So she does remind me of the sun and those protective qualities of the sun, which also has to do with grace, which I'll talk about more just in a moment. So before I continue the talk, I actually want to start with the mantra to Jwala Malini. And so we'll just take a moment to take a comfortable seat, and if you'd like to close your eyes as I chant the mantra. I'm Hrim Shrim Om Jwala Maliniye. Om Hrim Jwala Maliniye Namaha. Shri Padukam Pujayami Tarpayami Namaha. I'm Hrim Shrim Om Hrim Jwala Maliniye Namaha. Shri Padukam Pujayami Tarpayami Namaha. I'm Hrim Shrim Om Hrim Jwala Maliniye Namaha. Shri Padukam Pujayami Tarpayami Namaha. So today, talking a little bit about grace. Grace is the nurturing impulses of consciousness available to everybody. It has this nurturing quality. It has a quality of spontaneity. And so many of us, including myself, love a plan. I love to have a plan, to know what to do next, to see what's coming, to anticipate. But grace is something that is outside of that. It's providence. And providence is this supportive, divine influence that is protecting and guiding. And so through providence, we can receive grace. I'd also like to talk about a few things that we can do to support attuning ourselves to grace. Sometimes we can think that grace or these impulsive, spontaneous life events that are protective for us happen to other people, but that's not true. And so hopefully just by discussing more about grace and some practices that we can do to attune ourselves to grace, hopefully you'll feel more connected to that if you don't already. And then after I talk about that, then we'll sit together in meditation. So last week, Ryan Strong, he reflected upon Mr. Davis's Spiritual Basis of Real Prosperity. So it was a book that Mr. Davis wrote to support us to attune to grace. and how we can live our lives with true and full prosperity, where we can have full enjoyment of our senses, where we can be materially prosperous in a way that's supportive to our loved ones and ourselves, that we can live according to our own personal path of power, whether that be our occupation or how we're expending our daily energy, and also how we can become spiritually awake. So he, in that book, spoke about 8 principles, which Ryan brought up last week. And just to quickly go over what those principles are, because grace is one of those principles. I just want to list what they are for you, just to remind you what we talked about last week. And so the 8 principles are inspiration, aspiration, vision, envisioning, education, participation, conviction, persistence, and grace. And what struck me last week was Ryan, he reflected that we see these things as a list when we read them. And you could take it as to be linear steps. First you're inspired, then you aspire, then you have a vision, then you receive education. And that can work very well. But I also invite you, as he reflected last week, that these principles can nourish and inform each other. So just to talk a little bit about inspiration and aspiration as examples. Inspiration, when we're inspired, it's that initial spark or that infusion into the mind body. It's a kind of spiritual influence. It arises from within, it touches our soul. So we could be inspired in many ways. Viewing a beautiful piece of art, or hearing music that's uplifting, something that really touches us. It's a feeling. I'm sure all of you have been inspired at some point in your lives. Sometimes it can happen without you knowing that it's going to happen, and sometimes you seek it out. Both are important. And so with inspiration, our intuition can be really nourished and grow that way. Intuition is our ability to know things without thinking about them. And it's super important to know that your intuition is just as important as any other part of yourself. Our intuition is that voice. It's a vehicle. It allows us to receive. Allows us to receive and hear grace, to be guided by providence. Then there's aspiration. Aspiration has to do with this desire. It's a motivating force. It helps us to rise to a higher level of thinking and acting so that we can achieve meaningful goals in our lives. So it's a very motivating force. And often we'll be inspired by something that will then motivate us, aspire us to improving ourselves and the lives of others. And so with grace, those actions, those nurturing impulses of consciousness we can use an inspiration and aspiration to then allow ourselves to feel that grace. And so they work together. They can work together. They can nourish each other. And so I invite you to take some time, if you can, if you do have that book, to read through it, to learn more about the principles, and to then attune yourself to grace. And so how do we do that? How do we attune ourselves to grace? I would say the one thing for me personally that has helped me attune more to grace is to accept it. Is to actually know that it's there for us and to receive and accept it. It's very hard, I think, when we have more difficult experiences in our lives happen, things that usually loss is a big thing that can feel very difficult. it can be hard to know that that actually can be a moment of grace for us. So an illness or a travel plan that went awry last minute, or, you know, something that was unplanned. Like I said before, I don't know about you, but I love a plan. I feel very secure with a plan. But we also have to really allow for when our plans go awry. We have to allow for that. It's an opportunity to cultivate our faith and to know that there's grace for us. So if you can reflect on your own lives, have there been moments where you were dealing with a difficulty and you didn't know what to do? It could happen in the near future for you. You just don't know what to do. That is the moment where you can allow yourself to surrender to providence, to know that there is that divine influence that will support you. So that's where the work is. That's where the opportunity to to work with your consciousness, to work with your awareness steps in. I had a experience, and I think I brought this up before because it was kind of a bigger experience for me about 3 or so years ago, where I really didn't know where I was going to live. And I have a daughter, so at the time she was maybe like 7, and I think it was right in the beginning of the pandemic, and the home that I had was no longer going to be mine. And there were some moments where I really didn't know. I didn't know how I was going to be able to find a new home. I really had to cultivate that surrender, that knowing that I would be supported. And it happened in little ways, like the mortgage person that I worked with, because he was so experienced in his field, and he knew me from past purchases. I could tell that, I don't know how he did it, but he was able to provide me with the financing that I could afford. I mean, this was actually a reality. It wasn't out of left field, but he provided me with financing to be able to get an affordable mortgage for myself. The other thing that happened was there were no homes in the area that I wanted to live. There were like none available. But then popped up this one little house that was kind of sad looking a little bit, you know, and seemingly not in an ideal location. So I think many people weren't interested in it, but it was my house, and everything lined up, very kind of like last minute and just like day by day, hour by hour kind of thing. And I was provided with a home that is very nurturing, very comfortable. It's very positive. It's a good place for my daughter to live. We live near nature. But there was a point where I had to really surrender, really surrender and trust. So if you can in your own lives, remember a time where something like that has happened for you, where something seemingly negative or potentially, you know, unsettling or scary has happened for you, and how a seemingly difficult event, long-term, bigger picture, ended up being grace. And the more that you can recognize that in your lives, when you reach those difficult moments in life, the time frame of you suffering or feeling, you know, nervous or worried, between that and actually feeling the grace becomes shorter and shorter. And then there's a moment where whatever event happens in your life, you actually feel the grace in that moment. You become fully attuned and conscious with the moment. And that's something I'm working with myself right now. And I hope that in your own practice that you're able to attune to that for yourselves as well. And so cultivating faith that there is grace for us is really helpful and important. So identify your fears. When they come up, banish them and surrender. And keep doing that. Use that as a practice. Cultivating grace, use the principles that I talked about in the beginning. Inspiration, aspiration, educating yourself when you need to achieve something that you're inspired to do. Persist in what it is. Allow for grace. All of these things. So cultivate using those principles. And then, of course, surrendering when there's difficulty. Knowing that, our little selves, we can't control everything. Some of us might really feel comfortable trying to do that, but we just can't. And eventually we'll all have an experience where we just don't have that kind of small self-control. But again, notice grace. It will increase, as you allow for that to happen in your life. So pay attention. Make sure you pay attention to that. And then question yourself, are you living in accordance with your fears, or are you living more intentionally? Like, make that choice. Make that choice to be conscious. And suffering will start to reduce. It's really wonderful. I know many of you practice this already, but I just wanted to remind you about these things. So allow for grace, allow for the nurturing impulses that spontaneously occur. Learn to recognize them. And do your best to support others as well, so that you become a vehicle for grace. So, with that home buying experience, there were so many people that just would do a little thing, and I could tell it was because they had a genuine care for me. They were partaking in that grace. So you can also become an active participant. It's through us, it's through people that the divine can move through. So the last thing that I want to say about cultivating grace is to work with affirmation. And so there's one affirmation from Mr. Davis that I'd like to work with today. And at the beginning of meditation, I will speak the affirmation, and then I invite you to receive that. Tune into the words and tune into the belief of them, and it can support you. So I invite everyone just to take a comfortable seat with your spine straight. You can close your eyes. I am prosperous. I live effectively. I am receptive to my unplanned good that the universe provides. I am receptive to the unplanned good that the universe provides. I am always compliantly responsive to the freely expressive actions of God's nurturing grace. And one more time. I am prosperous. I live effectively. I am receptive to my unplanned good that the universe provides. I am always compliantly responsive to the freely expressive actions of God's nurturing grace. And let us take a moment to acknowledge all enlightenment traditions, to acknowledge anyone who is seeking a spiritual path. that you feel provided for with grace. And let's take a moment to acknowledge the Kriya Yoga lineage, Maha Avatar Babaji, Lahiri Mahashaya, Sri Swami Yukteswar, Paramahansa Yogananda, Mr. Roy, Eugene Davis, and all of their successors as we sit in meditation today. And we'll begin with 3 ohms. You're welcome to receive or to join. Inhaling deeply. If you have any Kriya practices, meditation techniques that you generally employ, you may do so now. If you're newer to meditation, you can begin by attuning yourself, attuning your awareness to your breath. Inhaling through your nostrils and exhaling. You can bring your awareness with your eyes closed by bringing your gaze or your focus to the point just above your eyebrows at the center of your forehead, the location of your higher brain centers. For those of you newer to meditation, if you notice thoughts coming and going, that's normal. Just allow them. Notice if you're having a thought, allow it to pass. And return to the breath. You can bring in Om mantra with a focus at the center of the forehead, just above the eyebrows. Om, 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 Om. And just continue to attune yourself with your breath. Acknowledge if you're having thoughts, allow them to pass. Eventually they'll settle. Continue attuning to your breath, inhaling and exhaling. Allow yourself to be breathed. If you feel your mind wandering, return. Om, 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 om. We'll close meditation with one Om, inhaling deeply. Om. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Om. Peace, peace, peace. I am prosperous. I live effectively. I am receptive to my unplanned good that the universe provides. I am always compliantly responsive to the freely expressive actions of God's nurturing grace. Thank you, everyone. Look forward to seeing you all next week. Peace.